Miss Jackson's visit to Iowa City is made possible through a generous donation from Hills Bank and with support from the Foundation for the Iowa City Community Schools. Shout out to them for sponsoring our incredible visiting author, Miss Tiffany Jackson, and for making this event possible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to have you. All right, I know we don't have a whole lot of time, so I am going to plow through my questions.
Okay.
All right? Okay. In the novel, The Awakening of Malcolm X, which you co-authored with his daughter, Ilyasa Shabazz, you mention a quote Malcolm said about books. My alma mater was books, a good library. I could spend the rest of my life reading, just satisfying my curiosity. As a teen librarian, I'm always scouting for the right book for the right young person at the right time because I know how important that is. Would you say as a writer that you feel a similar way about reading as Malcolm? And if so, why do you think reading is so important for young people?
Ooh, well, reading is just like, like a huge eye, like for the world, Like I learned so much through reading. So I think it's highly valuable that teens, all kids, honestly, get a chance to view the world from a different lens, especially if you're not from that specific culture or whatnot. You get a chance to really explore from the comfort of a comfy couch or a reading nook or a library. I think it's incredibly important. And like Malcolm said, you just learn so much. And so I'm always excited to explore new books and, have those visceral reactions despite not being there.
Yeah. Me too. All right, going back to the book again, what do you think, if Malcolm X was alive today, do you think he would say things have improved for our BIPOC communities, or have systems shifted, evolved, and continue to oppress?
I'm not sure what Malcolm would say, honestly, because a lot of his feelings about systems changed right before he was assassinated. And so I think it's an interesting concept. I can't even imagine. I feel like maybe his family would know better than I would. But I will say that one of the things that I loved learning about him is, in the midst of the awakening of Malcolm X, the way he really looked at the prison system, the way he really focused on the fact that there should be more of a reformative branch to it. Mm-hmm. I think that he would be devastated to learn the way we are treating, our incarcerated masses, and would be fighting for justice for that more than anything else, because he's been in the shoes of a lot of the prisoners that we see today. Mm-hmm. So I think that he would be enraged as much as I am. I'm quietly enraged. Yes.
Yeah. Did you learn anything new from his daughter that you didn't know about him before?
I learned so much new about Malcolm, honestly. I think, when the first time I actually read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I was, in high school. The copy I have was actually my father's, and he read it when he was, younger. Yeah. So I think I learned so much outside of his words, especially because he's just telling you, just basically from his viewpoint, but not from the viewpoint of the people who watched him, people who experienced life with him. Mm-hmm. I love learning a lot of, just the smaller traits about him, right? He was such a devoted, loving father. Mm-hmm. I don't think people notice that. They only see this militant man, but he was adorable with his kids. Yeah. He loved strawberry ice cream. Everything about him was just very warm and so loving and heart. And I think that's what people misconstrue his passion, because he really loved Black people. Yeah. And so he was fighting for them till the very end.
Right. I love that in the book, just the way you humanize people who are serving sentences with him too. I love the way you do that with your characters, bringing them out, that, maybe they've been convicted of something, but everybody is human, and we're all, you really do a great job of humanizing people in all of...
Because I think it's important, right? Because these are humans, at the end of the day. And I believe that they do deserve a chance for atonement, a chance for forgiveness and change. I go into, detention centers and talk to young men and women. And I can't go into, these places and say, you deserve a second chance at life and not truly believe that. So I do believe that, no one is defined by their mistakes, that they do have an opportunity for redemption. So I think that that's really important. And I think Malcolm is an incredible example. He went to prison for, theft, but he came out such a changed man. And I think that's really important and a possibility for all of us to do the same.
Yep. Great. So you have an extensive background in TV, and I know that you're a full-time author now, you said this morning. Would you say that having that extensive background has made the transition to becoming an author even more smoother?
Yes, actually, I think so. I think I'm used to, I think TV and books, or film, TV and books, are very much closely related cousins. It's just, a different format, but the same type of media, I suppose you could say. And so being on the business side, I sort of understand the way things work a bit. Being on the business side of television, I understand the way things work in the publishing industry as well, too. So I have a bit more patience. I have a bit more understanding of like the nooks and cranny and budgeting and traveling and PR and et cetera. Like I know, and granted, I don't know everything in publishing. I wish I did, because sometimes I feel really like, a fish out of water. Even, 6 or 7 books deep, I'm still like, so how does that work? But I think some of my ignorances, has been a bit of a bliss as well, too, because I get to just kind of focus on my work and not kind of get into the minutia of things. But yeah, working in television has definitely helped me like understand just the basic broad strokes of everything. And so it really prepared me to, sort of enter this industry, as a fully functioning adult, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's life experience that I gained from working in television that really helped me, just be a professional in my field right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. It was really neat this morning just to kind of see the way you storyboarded, like the house, and then you storyboard the character, so it's almost looks like a movie or something. But it's kind of like, wow, that's really that's really fascinating the way that you do that.
I mean, I've definitely applied a lot of what I learned in film to make every book as cinematic as possible. So I still kind of follow a script format. All my books have like a 3-act structure in a way, the same way that we do in scripts. And I'm very visual, so I want everything to feel like it's visual as well too while you're reading.
Yeah, awesome. So one of our high school volunteers couldn't make your presentation today at City High.
Oh, no.
But she wanted to know, what does a typical day in the life of Tiffany Jackson look like?
Whew, okay, so typical day. It's funny because I feel like I've been doing back-to-back school visits.
Yep.
So, so I guess a typical day, I wake up. I typically have to rush to take my dog out because, he's little and he has a small bladder. I try to have a smoothie or, tea in the morning, big tea drinker, and, all of my vitamins before I go up to my office and try to start working. I typically try to write first before before the rest of the world wakes up. So usually I'm like up at like 6 or 7. So hoping to get some words in and, hit any deadline issues. And then I turn to my email and I start answering emails. Sometimes I'm on social media, just preparing, social media posts and stuff like that for the day. Then I get back into writing. I try to eat as healthy as humanly possible. If I don't meal prep, then sometimes I have to step down to go and cook dinner. And then, I try to like ease into the evening after around like 7 or 8. And then depending if I'm like traveling, sometimes I have to, pack my bags. I'm getting, things ready for my dog to go to the sitter. So it's just a lot of like, life details I'm working through in between trying to write. Now, if my typical day is like anything like, traveling, and especially doing school visits, usually I'm up at like 6. I try to then answer emails and then, get ready for the day, prepare my presentations. That's another thing sometimes I do during the week is preparing the presentations that I'm doing in schools. trying to figure out like, what the weather is like in Iowa because it seemed really cold, but I'm like, actually it's really beautiful here. So, it's all really contingent upon the week.
Yeah. Flexibility, but you have some of your same routines going through most of the days.
Yes. I mean, definitely, there's, and then authors, I feel like I saw a post that Victoria Aveyard did recently about, kind of some of the pain the authors go through just, kind of doing work. And so in the middle of, my regular day-to-day, I'm trying to fit in doctor's appointments, physical therapy, chiropractor appointments, mental health therapists. Like I'm kind of like juggling all that and trying to write. So it could be a lot.
I remember Kate DiCamillo, a children's author, said one time that people think it's so glamorous to be a writer, but this morning you were talking about getting up, grinding, writing, going to work, writing in the middle of that. Just always, you're always kind of juggling all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you're always like, and I'm blessed to be able to do this, to be able to kind of be like a mobile mogul in a lot of ways, because I'm able to, bring my laptop anywhere. So last week I was writing in Mexico, and this week I'm writing in Iowa. So it really just depends.
Wow, those are quite polar opposites. So going kind of back to that Mexico element, you've traveled to so many amazing places in the world, I've read. Do you have a favorite destination? And do you feel like your books are received differently in different countries?
So my favorite place I've ever been actually is Cuba. Ooh. That was really, I just had such a fantastic time. And it was like right before, we had our whole embargo situation here in the States. So that was definitely like my favorite place to go. I'm trying to think of like other places that I'm like, this is gorgeous. Tulum was beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
And I loved Kenya. So yeah, there are so many like amazing places I've been. I think I'm trying to like figure it out as far as like how my books are received other places. It's, some books have been sold different places. Like, I'm in the UK, I'm in Brazil, I am in Korea, I'm in France, I'm in Spain. So I'm just trying to figure out like, judging by just like Instagram posts, I have to like press like see translation all the time. I think they're being received well. And, it's funny because, originally when I first, became an author, a lot of people weren't interested in, my stories, oftentimes because they already feel like, oh, we already have a Black book. Sure. We don't really need another one. I think they're like kind of expanding upon that. So it's taken a while to get here. I never had as many foreign sales as I used to, but now it's been great.
Yeah, and you can have 6 Black authors all at once writing a book.
Yes.
Okay, so speaking of your book, Let Me Hear a Rhyme, was set in Brooklyn, where you lived for a while. Does the character of Jasmine or any of your characters bear any resemblance to you?
Oh, absolutely. I think the 3 main characters of Let Me Hear a Rhyme are definitely like my whole personality. I grew up in Brooklyn. I'm very much a Brooklyn smart mouth kid. So a lot of their disses and stuff like that, they just remind me of me and my cousins like growing up. So they're definitely like me. I think like that book is such like a love letter to like my childhood, to hip hop, to Brooklyn, to everything.
I was kind of feeling that, wasn't when I was reading it. I was like, this just seems like an amalgamation of like, oh, this is kind of like who she is.
Which is funny because that's the one book that's most like me, and all my other books are like thrillers and horror, and so people think that I'm like, death and darkness, but I'm actually like a complete clown. And
so also in this book, you beautifully capture Brooklyn's music scene in an almost time capsule kind of an element. And I've seen you use music in some of your other books quite often. How important was music for you growing up? And more importantly, do you feel like East Coast artists were able to articulate your story more than anyone else?
So I think music was incredibly important for specifically like my generation, like millennials or whatever we're called, mostly because, well, I'm a child of hip hop. Hip hop came around like the exact time I was born. So a lot of things have changed because of that. And a lot of the landscape of the entertainment industry has changed because of that. So I think music was incredibly important because it's very much the soundtrack of my life, and it dictated a lot of the things that we have done, growing up in the past. So I think that music was incredibly important, and it's sort of like, and I mean, I think music is important to most teenagers, right?
Yeah.
We all had that song or album that we loved while we were teenagers, that really like just defined us. Like we couldn't get in a car, or we couldn't like go anywhere without headphones listening to something. So I think it's always important, but for specifically kids of hip hop who grew up during that like era of just solidifying what the genre actually is, it just hits different.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like everybody also has like a secret shame of a band that they listen to that they don't admit. Do you have one of those?
I'm not like, it's not so much a secret. I was like laughing because you know, Let Me Hear a Rhyme takes place in 1998, and when I was doing all the research just to remind myself like who came out during that year, I realized that Britney Spears came out that year.
Wow.
And I was like, I love her. Like, like I had all the songs that I like loved by her around then. I was like, man, she was good. Like,
she was catchy.
She was super. I was
she
just like
good.
free Britney all that time. Like,
okay, you touched on this a little bit today at City High. So we hosted a Freedom to Read program this past weekend here at Iowa City Public Library. It's getting increasingly difficult for schools and libraries across the country. You mentioned one of your books this morning had appeared on the banned book list. I think you said 29 times or something.
It's a 26 most banned.
26 most banned. Are you noticing an uptick in challenges around your own work? And if so, what advice would you give to young people and to those who are protecting freedom from censorship and advocating for intellectual freedom?
There's definitely been an uptick, a very annoying uptick, honestly, because there's so many other things to worry about, so many other things that need focus, that need parental focus, but parents are focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah.
And so I feel that kids are doing the right thing right now by, like, you know, speaking up and being advocates, even at an early age. I always tell or encourage students to, you know, just because you can't vote doesn't mean that you don't have a voice, that you have every right to make adults sweat because they are holding your future in their hands. Yeah. And you should ask them the clarifying questions. So I think it's really incredibly important to make sure that they know that they have like that ability to do that. And I think no one tells them that. No one like gives students like, you know, the permission to speak their mind. So I'm hoping that they continue, and I'm hoping that, you know, they go into the board meetings. They continue to go into the board meetings. I love seeing the videos of them standing up to adults. And so if they continue to go into board meetings, and at the end of the day, like, this is just giving them the fire to being the legislative people that we need later on when they are able to vote. Yeah. So I feel like all of this book banning is just gonna truly backfire on a lot of people, because within a couple of years, we're going to have a whole generation who's going to remember these moments. Yeah. And I think that's why I'm not super worried, I guess. Like, I'm just like, okay, the kids are all right.
The kids are all right. I feel like I went to see a presentation by a young Iowa City person her name is Deja Taylor. She's a scientist in town here. And another thing that she mentioned was, you know, she would always put up her hands for things waiting to be chosen. And as a young person, she realized, don't wait to get chosen. Like, you're already chosen. Just go out and do whatever you want to do. And I think that speaks to that quite a lot too. Okay, so you talked about your horror stuff, and I know people think about you with your horror stuff. I hate haunted houses. I hate horror stories. I hate horror movies, because I do think like the reality of our world is scary enough.
Yes.
Why do you think horror and darkness works so well for many of your stories? Why do you love being scared, and what is it about this genre that you love so much?
Oh, wow. I've just always loved horror movies. I don't know, there is something about the visceral reaction to entertainment that is so addicting.
Like having a heart attack? It's horrible. I hate that feeling.
I truly love it, and I feel like there's no other genre that gives you that like feeling. Of course, maybe like love stories. Like, but like, you go through a roller coaster of emotions. Right. And I think that really closely is something that's related to kind of how I felt growing up, specifically like in Brooklyn, the 80s and 90s. I feel like there was a lot of horror stories outside already being played. But there is something very contained about a horror story. Like, I know for a fact that this is fake, but yet it's giving me all the chills and all the emotions. So yeah, why not love horror? Why not like love all like the great, like, it's fun. I always tell people it's fun. What I do feel like is that, you know, growing up watching so much horror, I never really saw a lot of diverse horror. Right. And it was really frustrating because, you know, Black kids love horror movies too. Right. And I always like had to say that. And I was that, like, if people made me feel weird for liking it as a kid. And I'm like, but it's entertainment. Why not like it? Right. So I think there's definitely a space for it. Yeah. We're just still fighting for it.
Yeah. Are you a fan of the Jordan Peele movies?
I am a fan of the Jordan Peele movies. Yes, yes. I love all of his movies.
I know. I feel like one of your books was compared to like a mix of Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, it's a compliment of both of you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Who are a few of your favorite authors, not R.L. Stein, or anybody that you may have co-authored a book with?
Oh, yes. Okay, that's an absolute great question. Okay, so some of my favorite authors, I am in love with Jessamine Ward's work. There's just something so, you know, profound about everything that she writes, so I love her work. I make fun of them all the time, but I love Jason Reynolds' work. He just feels like very much like home.
He's so sweet.
Yeah, super sweet. I, of course, love Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison. Huge fan of Zora Neale Hurston. Just her body of work sort of mimics kind of my curiosity about people as well too. And I'm trying to think of other authors that I'm like in love with. Of course, I love Stephen King, and I'm gonna butcher his name, so I probably shouldn't say it. Yeah, those are some of my favorites.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. I think that's all we have.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.